You want to know the truth about trust and certainty? The more you know, the less you know. I'll tell you why. Welcome to Life Talks with Lex, a podcast where we keep it real, raw, and relevant as we explore conscious conversations about the human experience and all of life's conditions. I'm your host, Coach Lex, a self-development and leadership empowerment coach whose mission and passion is to bring more love, joy, peace, and empowerment to individuals on a real level. I have a heavy background in human services, psychology, mental health, behavioral health care, human design, astrology, and much more. I am so glad that you're here and hope you subscribe and stick with me through this season and beyond to be a part of the Conscious Collective. Hey friends, this is going to be an inception of an episode. I really tried to get out of recording it this week, but the universe was begging me to talk about trust for some reason. You know I like to follow the call and see where it leads, so that's what we're going to do. By the way, I hope you guys had a really great long weekend. And perhaps you took today off too because you listened to last episode and you were like, you know what? I do need to see more. I do need to be more. I do deserve to take that PTO. I hope you are. I hope you are. If you're not, that's cool too. If you're back at work, I hope you're feeling revived and energized and in gratitude for the extra day you got this weekend. And I hope you did something great with it. And if you're tuned in with me here, I hope you're ready for an absolute roller coaster because I really don't know where this is going to go. But there are a few things that I do know for sure. And one of them is that we are absolutely obsessed with certainty. Obsessed. You cannot tell me otherwise. I used to think it was a me thing. Like, I just need to get to the bottom of this. I need to be sure. I need to be certain before I take action, before I do anything differently, before I say something. Like, I need to be certain. It's just a human thing. We want certainty because we don't want to be wrong. We don't want to be hurt. We don't want to be unprepared. We don't want to feel incompetent. The list goes on and on and on. So we are in this desperate search for certainty. And in that pursuit of certainty, we stop at nothing to get the answers we need, right? Like we are obsessed with researching and contemplating and asking the expert and asking a friend and reflecting and spending all of this energy so we don't make the wrong choice. So we're well informed, so we know enough, so we minimize risk. Our intentions are good, right? But you ever do all of that to find you are now more confused and disoriented than you were when you began? Before all of this input and all of this information, you are now more uncertain than you have ever been about the choice or decision you need to make. And then you're just completely debilitated. Like you can't make a single decision because you're staring at the 12 million tabs you have open on your laptop and the 14 conversations you began discussing this decision, this circumstance, and you're still uncertain about its outcome. You're still uncertain about how you should move or what you should say or what you should do. Why? Why is that? Why is it that the more informed we become, the less we trust ourselves to make a decision? I wish I had a perfect metaphor for this right now, but I just don't. The only thing I can think of is a closet. So I want you to imagine walking into this closet with me, okay? The closet is gigantic. I'm talking the ultimate walk-in closet, probably as big as an upstairs loft, maybe bigger. Just miles and miles of clothes and shoes and accessories and textures and colors, and you have a huge premiere. You have to be at this big scale event, and it's really important that you make a good impression. And you are so excited walking into this closet because you're like, this is going to make my life so much easier. I have everything available to me. I can't go wrong, right? But you're in this closet and there are so many options. There are so many possibilities. There are so many combinations. And the more that you look, the more that you try, the more that you do, you find it impossible to settle on an outfit. Absolutely impossible. To the point where it's now 10 minutes before this event and you're sitting there, not dressed, not sure, and totally overwhelmed. And although that's not the best metaphor I could use, it does kind of give you an idea of what happens in our quest for certainty. Because the mind, the brain, paired with other brains, paired with information, can come up with an endless amount of possibility and possible outcomes and possible risks and possible pros and possible cons. It's endless, right? So when we think about that, how does that make our decision any more certain? It doesn't. All it does is make us aware of the many possibilities there are. Because the universe is infinite. It doesn't give us any sense of confidence. It doesn't give us any sense of certainty, any sense of trust, because the idea that there is certainty, just by itself is an illusion. And inherently, we know that. We know that life itself is a risk. It's a gamble. We know that we have no real control over the certainty of a decision or an outcome. We know that. But the problem is we're caught in this loop. We're caught in this loop where when we don't feel certain, we don't feel trust, we feel fear. And when we feel the fear, we use the very same tool to break through it that created it. The mind. The mind is on autopilot. It can't give us what we're looking for. It can only give us a combination of possibility, but it can't cultivate that real feeling we're after of trust. We can't think ourselves into trust. We can't think ourselves into certainty. It just doesn't happen. Nor can others think us there. Nor can information get us there, right? It doesn't start up in the mind, but we constantly use the mind to try to be more certain, more informed, more correct, more right, and we become even more confused, even more diverted. That's why I say the more you know, the less you know. The more we know, the more possibilities we're aware of. The more cons, the more pros, the more risks, the more rewards, the more outcomes. The more we know about the situation, the more information we know about the situation, the less we know what to do with it. The less we know how to conceptualize it, the less we know how to feel about it. My coach used to use a term with me, analysis paralysis, and now I use it all the time because I am someone who was obsessed with certainty and still am to a degree. But I mean, I would sit and I would stir and I would research and I think I was doing myself a real service by doing my due diligence. But it would get me so wrapped up in the web, in the tangled web of information and possibility and what if and maybe I should and well I could, that I would do nothing. I would literally become paralyzed by the uncertainty of trying to be certain. It was crazy. It was insane. So she used to tell me, like, the only way you're going to know is by doing. And I couldn't conceptualize that because I was someone who thought I couldn't take action before I was certain. I had to be certain. I had to know what I was doing, why I was doing it. You know, I had to know. I had to know what I was doing in order to take the action. But here's the catch-22 on that. Only by taking the action does the brain and body start to cultivate certainty and trust. Stick with me. Here comes the inception, okay? Your brain, you could give it more information, you could give it more input, you could give it more possibilities, more factors to work with. But it does not yet have an experience to take one of those factors or possibilities and really believe it. It doesn't. It doesn't have a reference point. It just has information. And you don't know what to do with that information because, again, you haven't yet experienced it. You don't know. You don't know. You know things now, but you don't really know. Let's reverse engineer that for a second so it really lands. Let's take the concept of fear and trauma, for instance, right? Let's use a simple example and say that when you were age 7, you were bit by a dog. And now you're 21 and you are still deathly afraid of dogs. Okay, because you haven't had any other experience with a dog since you were 7. And you know you are terrified of dogs. You don't want to get bit by a dog again. So you are terrified of dogs. You know you're going to your friend's house and your friend has a dog. And you know you don't want to be going inside to see that dog. You're not going to go near the dog. You're going to stay away from the dog because there is a fear within you that is attached to a real experience. It is emotionally driven. It is an emotionally charged experience that keeps this fear alive. Now, the fear is going to continue to exist in the same way up in that brain of yours because it is attached to the only experience it has reference to. Now, your friend tries to tell you, listen, this dog that I have is super sweet. He's so friendly. He's never bit anyone. He's not aggressive. You're fine. Like, you're going to be okay. Like, it's okay, right? That's just information to your brain. It's information. It's a possibility. It's a possible outcome. It's a possible pro. But your brain is going to kick in and say, no. I don't know that. I don't actually know that. You're telling me, but I don't know that. What I do know is the experience I'm connected to. We can't think our way out of it. We can't. We don't think our way out of it. We don't think our way into trusting something new. The only way we develop a trust in the opposite direction, or we build up a trust for dogs. We build up a trust for self, for people, for the situation, for making decisions, is by doing it. There is no amount of information, unless it's connected to the personal experience, that is going to create more certainty and trust. An even easier way to think about it might even be through relationships, right? Like you've had your heart broken time and time again. And so now you have this inherent distrust of men, this inherent distrust of women. Your brain tells you it's unsafe. It's unsafe to be dating. It's unsafe to be putting myself out there. Well, you don't think your way out of that belief. The only thing that changes it is you stepping out there again, trying again, being vulnerable to alter that experience, to allow it to show you that that may not be true across the board, right? But when the brain has no reference point and it only knows what it knows, it only believes what it is connected to, and it doesn't have a connection in either direction, it can be extremely debilitating because you really don't know. And the first thing our brain is going to do in these circumstances is operate from a primal safety level. Our brain is going to attempt to identify if we have an experience, okay, this is safe because it's what we know. If we have not yet had the opposite experience, well, then that is unsafe because we don't yet really know it. We can't trust in it. We can trust in what we have experienced, right? Like I think about 2 years ago when I quit the job I was at for 9 years. It was with the same company for 9 years. And I knew inherently, not in my brain, not from a logical standpoint, but in my body, in my being, I knew it was time to go. And I kept hearing that in my body. It's time to go. It's time to go. Now, the time is now. And my brain kicked in and was like, yeah, but where are we going? Like, what are we doing? Shouldn't we have another job lined up first? Shouldn't we? Like, what are you talking about? That's not safe. That's not smart. We don't do that. Like, the programming kicked in to try to keep me safe, to try to keep me secure, right? Because we're all about that security and that stability. It tried to kick in to say, yeah, but we're not safe yet. We're not safe. This is what you know. You've been here. Every 2 weeks, you get a paycheck. You know the amount of that paycheck. What do you mean? That is what happens up in the brain, right? So that's where it becomes a catch-22, is I'm not going to think my way into this certainty of doing it. In order to really cultivate that certainty and trust in doing something different than what I know, I have to just do it. I have to take action on it. Now, that part is really hard. And it's not just hard because there's risk involved and we don't know what's going to happen. It's hard because, and I was saying this just the other day, it's hard because we have been conditioned to trust everything but ourselves, to trust everything more than ourselves. Everything outside of us knows better than we do, right? Like we ignore the deep intuitive gut instincts, the responses in our body, the conversation our body tries to engage us in. We don't trust that. We don't trust that because we live in this world that is now rationalized and justified, and there's an answer for everything, right? So what is the first thing that we do? We go searching. We are obsessed with the search. We are obsessed with getting the answers from everything but ourselves. Schooling, experts, gurus, family members, friends, the internet, information, books, everything but ourselves. We don't think we have the answer, but here's the irony. We think all of these other human beings, because that's where we go looking for the answer. We think all of these other human beings that are just human, like we are, somehow know better than us about a decision that we have to make in our life. They know better than us. Let that sink in for a second. Now, I'm not saying we don't need other people. I'm not saying we don't lean on one another and we shouldn't lean on one another and collaborate with one another and work together and, learn and grow. We absolutely need to do that. That's how our world keeps spinning. But what we need to do more of is really remember, because we've forgotten on such a deep level, that we have this beautiful built-in internal wisdom, that our body is a vessel that will literally show us the way, that our brains are not the only tool we can use to lead us, that at the end of the day, the only thing we can control is ourselves. And right now, it's really hard to trust ourselves because we've been so far removed from that wisdom. We've been conditioned that everyone else knows better. Everything else knows better than us. So when we're faced with a decision, like an important life decision, much like the one I described of should I stay or should I go? Should I collect the same paycheck for the next 10 years? Or, do I do something else that I haven't quite yet figured out, but do I take that leap because I know I'm meant for more? It's really important in those moments to remember the wisdom of our body, remember the wisdom of our intuition. Because if we don't, if we take that moment and we go and we search for answers outside of ourselves, every time we are forfeiting an opportunity to cultivate that trust. Why don't I trust myself? Why don't I trust my emotions? Why don't I trust my decisions? Why can't I make my decisions? Because every time you have that opportunity, you're giving it away. Just one time, don't give it away. One time, just try leaning into that internal wisdom that you can't explain. That internal experience you're having, and you're not sure why. It's there for you. It's for you. Lean into it. Recently I was listening to an audio by Richard Rudd, who is an author and teacher of the Gene Keys synthesis within human design. And in this audio, he was describing, or he was talking about how long before we had this world of scientific rationalization and justification, and long before we had the technology and the language and the all of the resources that we have in modern day, long before we had any of that, we had ancient wisdom. And ancient wisdom was cultivated from that experience internally. And from that interaction between the internal and the external experience of life. There was no, let's go to Google and find the answer to this. There just wasn't. There was a time in life where that was not a possibility. So I just want you to remember how much we have at our fingertips now. Sometimes it's not about getting more and more and more and more and more. Sometimes it's about simplifying. It's about clearing out all of that excess, although it can come in handy, clearing out all of that excess to really make room and space to get clear on what is already within us, what is already there for us, and trying to desperately get a hold of us all the time. And if you can also accept and understand that at the end of the day, the only thing we can control is ourself, then you'd really start to pay attention to what's going on in there. You'd really start to pay attention to how you can nurture that wisdom, how you can hear more of it. You'd be amazed at how deep that well goes, and how much is in there waiting for you to tap into. But if you think for 1 second you're going to get more of it through the mind, by thinking and overthinking and analyzing and overanalyzing and using logic and talking it out and asking this person and asking that person, no. You get more access to it. It gets stronger. It gets clearer. It gets louder when you lean into it, when you pay attention to it and you listen to it and you nurture it. That's the only way. And one thing you can do right now, because again, this is how the brain works. One thing you can do right now is start thinking of where you have evidence of this. Think of a time when you just leaned into that internal wisdom and you acted on it. You made a choice from that space and it worked out pretty well for you. You now know that you can trust that. You can trust it. It might not always be 10 for 10. It might not always work out in your favor, but if you really start to practice and you really start to pay attention to it, it will really kick in when you need it, like automatically. And what you'll start to also learn or accept is that there really is no right or wrong decision. There is no right or wrong outcome in the grand scheme of things, right? Because when you're acting from that space, it's almost like this is a need I had at the time. This is something I wanted at the time. I followed that. I honored myself. I trusted myself, right? Like there's nothing wrong in that. There's no, well, I listened to Bobby and I really should have, I knew I should have done this instead. But, once I sat on the internet and I searched for, all of that control is now outside of you. You gave it away. You forfeit the opportunity to develop that trust. And you're resentful and you're pissed off and you're annoyed, right? But if you know you're acting from a place that honors your internal experience, it honors what you think you may need, what you feel you may need, what you hear you may need. If it honors that, then it can't be wrong. It can't be. It might not be the best outcome, right? But even that is purposeful. So the more you listen to this, the more you lean into this, the clearer it gets. The less attached you grow to getting it right all the time. And the more you begin to see that all of this is happening for you and not to you. It's there for you to experience. And you may be sitting there thinking, well, I have no evidence of a time I leaned into this internal wisdom and it worked out. Maybe you never have, which I highly doubt. But Maybe you can't think of an experience that really gives evidence to what I'm saying. Well, I got news for you. You're going to have to create it. If you want to develop this trust within yourself, if you want to be able to take action on some of your wildest dreams, on some of your deepest needs and desires, and inherently, if I wait around for these, they're never going to happen for me, then you have to create it. You have to cultivate trust because it's not given to you. It can't be. One of the things that I do in my coaching, I don't sell trust. I can't. But it is a byproduct of everything that I do. All the work that I do with my clients, trust is the byproduct. It's not about getting more information. It's not about getting more input. I'm not advising. I'm not saying, okay, here's what you need to go and do. No. My entire mission, first and foremost, is about bringing people back home to themselves, harnessing their unique essence and really feeling that, understanding it, seeing it, experiencing it. When they do that, the trust that builds, the confidence that builds within themselves is unparalleled. And it becomes the most powerful thing that they can do because guess what? They're in their body every day. Every day they wake up as who they are designed to be. They wake up and they have access to that. Now imagine you wake up in that body every day and this well of wisdom is just flowing deep inside of you and you have access to it. And it's there every single day for you to lead and support and guide you. And you get to be in control of that flow that is uniquely designed for you. It's really some powerful stuff, but it takes work. It takes practice. It takes tuning out some of this excess consumption of information, news, media, social media, friends, family, all of the external stimuli that we consume on a daily basis. It takes tuning some of that out and really intentionally tuning into the frequency that is dying for you to pay it some attention internally. And truthfully, that is where some of the hardest work comes in, is tuning into that frequency, because many of us have been so far removed from ourselves. It's why I do what I do. It's why I am on that mission of reuniting people with themselves, of bringing them back home to themselves, because there's immense power there. There's immense clarity there, right? So much clarity. It's why I do my free energy alignment audits, right? You could book one right now and see where's my energy being given away? What are the areas I really need to tune out and tune in? It's not always clear. It's sometimes an area we need real support with. And it's also the reason I've started bringing in human design to my coaching, because it helps you to really see, okay, I do have a unique essence. I am perfectly designed, all my strengths, all my quote unquote weaknesses. I'm perfectly designed with what I need to make the best possible decisions for me. Because by the way, in human design, none of us are meant to make decisions from our mind. Think about that for a second. All of us have a unique decision-making strategy and process, but none of them originate from the mind. None of them. So it's really powerful stuff. If you are interested in learning more about human design, you can also find that link in the show notes. I'm starting to offer human design deep dives, personalized deep dives. But I also will be in the future teaching another free human design masterclass because I just think it's so invaluable to be able to understand that we are not all meant to operate in the same way and use the same techniques. And so really honoring our process is key for this certainty and trust. Super key. So both of those are available to you. And like I said, you can find them in the show notes. But the point here is creating this trust and creating this certainty does not happen without you getting really intentional about knowing you. Not your mind, not the guru, not the expert. Getting in touch with that internal experience, that internal wisdom that is built in to who you are. No one else has what you have. I need that to land. I say this a lot, but no one else has what you have. You are totally unique. Hear it. Hear it again. You are totally unique. And so if you are tapping into that wisdom, it's not wrong. It's not right. It's perfect. It's perfectly in expression of you. And that's all that matters. Now, the last thing I want us all to contemplate is the word perseverance. This word, for whatever reason, has come up way too many times in the past 3 weeks for me. But when I was trying to get out of recording this episode this week, I told you, I really was trying to get out of it. I was shuffling some cards, not tarot cards, but they're these like funny affirmator cards that a friend gave me a couple years ago. And so I was shuffling the cards and they all have something different on them, gratitude, strength, courage, whatever. And they say all these funny things. So I'm trying to shuffle the cards and I'm like, I'm trying to be like, channel my inner tarot reader, which I am not. I'm trying to channel it though. I'm like, what do I need to know this week? What do my listeners need to know? Like, what do I need to share with them? Thinking I'm doing something here. And I'm shuffling the cards and then I got them all laid out on my office floor. And, the card I pulled was gratitude. So that was, what do I need to know? And I was like, yeah, that's suiting, And then the second card I pulled for you guys was perseverance. And I chuckled because it's a bonus card in the deck. Not even a staple card. It's a bonus card. And I was like, maybe I'll incorporate this into the episode somehow and I'll read it to them because it really stuck with me. So first of all, here's what the card says. It seems you're on a massive journey right now, and this card has arrived to remind you that you will reach the other side. The mountain you're climbing is huge and formidable, but so is your ability to climb it. You don't need to enjoy it, you just need to tackle it. Complain if it makes the job easier. Blow off steam. You think mountain climbers get to the top of Everest on inspirational quotes? No way. They're grunting and crying and cursing like freaking pirates. That just doesn't sell a lot of posters. That's it. That's the card. What I really appreciate about that, aside from the synchronicity of last episode and the whole story I wrote about the journey, you can't make this shit up, is how real it is. None of this stuff is easy. And we're not going to think our way into it being easy. We're not going to use affirmations and inspirational quotes and just do it to get us through, right? We're not. The only way through it is doing it. The only way through it is not about, and I think when we think about perseverance sometimes, we think about it in terms of completion. Did I complete the task despite the challenges? Sometimes it's not even about the completion. It's about the continuance. It's about continuity. It's about movement. momentum. You keep going. You keep traveling. You may not have all the answers. You may not have the certainty. You may not be able to see to the other side of the mountain. You may not trust that in that moment that everything you need is on the other side of the mountain, but you'll be damned if you don't try. You'll be damned if you don't keep going. It's not about strength. It's about resilience. Strength is, look at me, I can pick up this 100-pound weight. Look at how strong I am, even though I might injure myself and drop it on my toe, right? It's that proving, it's that performance. Resilience says, look at me, I can't pick up this 100-pound weight yet, but I'm going to try again tomorrow. I'm going to still do what I can do, and I'm going to keep going. That is what it's about. None of this stuff is easy, and this podcast is not designed to try and trick you into thinking it is. To try and trick you into thinking it's all sunshine and rainbows. And listen, I know the journey of knowing self, of nurturing self, of self-love and self-care is not a glorious one. It is painful, lonely, revolutionary. It is some of the hardest work you will ever do. And along the way, I encourage you to bitch and moan and cry and scream and take breaks and go backwards and go forwards and be human. You're not going to think your way through this hard shit, this tough shit in life, just with these inspirational quotes and these affirmations. Those are belief management. But they do not change the fact that you are human and that this shit is tough. But you do it anyway. You persevere because in the journey, far greater than arriving at the destination is the tenacity, the conviction, the connection to the experience that you hold the capacity for. It's the trust, it's the certainty that you can only create by being on the journey and doing it. And when the road grows long and windy and bumpy and you're tired and you're ready to call it quits, come see a fellow traveler. I'm here to help you. I will end on this quote, my favorite quote of all time. When life is sweet, say thank you and celebrate. When life is bitter, say thank you and grow. I love you guys. Until next time. If you enjoyed today's episode of Life Talks with Lex, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. To stay current on all the latest from Coach Lex, you can find me on Instagram at Alexis Christie Coaching, or shoot me an email, alexischristiecoaching@gmail.com, with any comments, questions, concerns, or topics you'd like to see explored on the show. I look forward to hearing from all of you, and I look forward to the next conscious conversation.